The symbolism of a peaceful transfer of power carries additional significance today, seeing as the man swearing an oath was the very man 4 years ago who led an insurrection rather than accept the results of a free and fair election.
Lawrence O'Donnell, while we have eyes on what's happening here in the Rotunda, you had any first thoughts on what you've been watching thus far today?
Well, there is, I've noticed on social media this morning already, some confusion about the nature of this ceremony and the participation in it by people who said that the election of Donald Trump could mean the end of the continuity of this government. And this ceremony is, of course, to celebrate the continuity of this government, and everyone joining it is supporting the continuity of the government. But there are voters out there who are confused about people participating in it. And I think that's an understandable confusion. Serious observers of it understand it and understand the reason why President Biden would say something as magnanimous as welcome home to Donald Trump. But there is some confusion out there. There's 75 million people who voted for Kamala Harris for president, many of whom don't understand what this picture of unity is about. And that's something that I think we need to, in effect, teach because it's a lost lesson. And this is a very vivid example of what's at stake in the continuity of government and why those two people who just saw President Biden and Vice President Harris support it and are trying to support it by being there today.
I think it's time, it has been time for years now, actually, to kind of, at least occasionally, get beyond Trump himself to the much more vexing question of why would people vote for this person? You know, and I've always said, look, there is a rational Trump vote. It is the anti-tax vote. If you hate taxes and you hate government, and you're willing to risk the basic, functioning of democratic institutions, which most people who hate taxes are willing to do that. They hate it, with a intensity and a singularity similar to the way the people who hate abortion hate abortion.
Yeah.
And I think those two categories are rational Trump voters. I'm voting for Trump because I hate taxes and I don't care about anything else. Or I'm voting for Trump because I hate abortion and I don't care about anything else. But that doesn't account for most Trump voters, actually. And so all of the rest of them are voting for Trump voters because, I don't know, they hate us. I don't know, but they are a dangerous force in America. They're far more dangerous than Donald Trump. Without them, Donald Trump is absolutely nothing. And so, the news media, the big establishment news media, has always had this thing. It's implicit, and they used to kind of say it out loud, in the three network era, that, the voters are never wrong. No. They can be grotesquely wrong. They can be grotesquely racist. The voters have done horrible things in this country, electing George Wallace, governor of Alabama, and all these cruel, evil segregationists that they elected to the United States Senate and governorships. And so this never blame the voters thing is probably the single biggest inhibition that continues, by the way, right across all of them. I mean, it's not different on MSNBC. If you don't hear voters being blamed, for what we have here, because of this, just age-old convention in the major news organizations that you must never do that. The New York Times has never blamed Trump voters for anything. Yeah. The only thing the New York Times has ever done is try to find Trump voters in diners and sympathize with them. And that's a giant mistake. That's a really giant mistake. And they never did that when they were covering segregation. They never went into diners in Birmingham, Alabama, segregated white diners, to say to those people, to have sympathetic interviews with those people about why they feel the way they feel.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you and Rachel always talk about. We have normalized so much about Trump that here we are with a 91 felony count rapist I mean, it's just, I can't even believe we're having this conversation that it could, in fact, have the nuclear codes again, but, talking about the rise of fascism, that we could be sleepwalking into fascism. I have to hope Bruce Springsteen is right. What did he say recently? He said decent people in this country outnumber Trump supporters by 3-1. I mean, I still, for some reason, feel hopeful. I'm sort of curious how you're feeling right now and what predictions you have.
Well, I officially stopped predicting in 2015, I think it was, when Donald Trump was at 12% in the polls, and by the way, I've forgotten most of what I've said in my life, but I'll never forget sitting there on Morning Joe when Trump went from 6% in the polls to 12% in the polls, and I summoned all of the faux authority my voice could muster and declared something along the lines of, well, you don't think he's going to get any higher than that, do you? And so I was completely wrong, about
in your best Ted Baxter anchor voice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was totally wrong about that, because and look, here's the reason I was wrong. I'm a little embarrassed by this. I underestimated the number of stupid people and the number of racist people in America. And I grew up with those people in Boston. Like, I thought I had a handle on exactly, what their troop strength was. It's like, and I was really, really wrong. I thought they were around 30% maximum, and even they were strategic enough to say, I'm not going to vote for the clown. I'm going to vote for the guy who can actually beat, the liberal guy. So that was my underestimate.
Also, I should just note, a remarkable thing that we're seeing here is an empty Washington.
Yeah, it is. Aren't there hundreds of thousands of people there?
Yeah, I mean, you can see some people there on the side. It's sort of sparse. There are some Trump supporters who are there, but there are not very many people there at all. And the protests are also not visible in large numbers. We saw People's March this weekend in Washington, which did have thousands of people at it, but nothing on the scale that we saw in 2017. But also Trump supporters there in much smaller numbers. And that may be because the inaugural festivities have been moved indoors. But honestly, I expected this. Somebody there with the Ukraine flag. I doubt that's a Trump supporter. I expected this shot that we had here to be 20 deep on both sides of the street the whole way up, and it's really not. It's an interesting thing. It reminds me a little bit. Forgive me for making this analogy, but it reminds me a little bit of the predictions of mass crowds for Trump at each of his indictments and court proceedings, when we saw these small little gaggles of people